I'm going to talk about Obduction.
Okay.
With an O, not A. Yeah, I was gifted this for a friend on Steam, and I thought, all right, let's have a look, let's give it a go, because I think they'd heard me going on and on about The Witness previously. It is that kind of thing. It's a sort of walking simulator with puzzles.
Yeah.
So this is by Cyan Worlds, who you'll probably remember being famous for the Myst games.
Yes.
I don't know why this isn't a Myst game as such.
They don't own the rights.
Probably that's the thing, yeah. Probably, it was a Kickstart thing, it was a sort of breakaway thing, but yeah, it's the team that did Myst and the company that did Myst. And can you remember, Myst was one of before The Sims came along. I think Myst was the biggest.
It was the biggest selling
computer game of all time. Yeah, so
it needs to be remembered.
hugely
that,
popular.
What people consider to be these niche little, not real gamey things
Are often the biggest games
Yeah.
ever. Yeah, and it's the Call of Duties and you know the stuff we
they're,
play.
they're the niche.
They're the niche, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Myst being the biggest game of all time. I think largely because I think that was the only game you could buy on the Mac for quite a long time.
No, there were others.
But
One or two.
yeah, and then what toppled that off its throne? The Sims, also not a traditional game. So I don't know what it is now. Perhaps Saints Row GTA may have got there, or one of the
Oh, no,
Call of
GTA's still
Duties or
close.
something. No, well, so still probably The Sims. I have to go and find out at some point. I'm curious now. But yes, Obduction. So it's you fire it up, off you go. You're basically walking along a sort of nighttime mountain trail in some hiking part of America, it looks like, and then a giant sort of meteor sparkle thing comes down, and a floating, what looked like a strawberry made of energy, floats there and goes boom, and everything goes white. And what it does, it's kidnapped you and a spherical part of the landscape you're in, and moved it to an entirely different place. You sort of step out of this cave, and there's weird alien skies. I'm a sucker for weird alien skies. I do like a weird alien sky. And there's this sort of large sort of chunk of Arizona desert in sort of on the landscape of this other really weird alien world, and it later transpires that it's actually trapped inside a large force field dome, and off you go trying to figure out what's going on, and it's told through the usual medium of bits of paper and doomed holographic recording log things. So, and you're basically off you go trying to solve the puzzles as you go. It differs a great deal from The Witness in more the tradition of Myst. The puzzles, such as they are much more integrated into the world. It's machinery you're trying to fix and stuff. Whereas Witness, you are literally walking along solving a whole load of little grid puzzles on LCD panels. So you arrive in this town. I can't remember what the town's called now, but it's deserted. Something's gone on. There's some weird alien tech everywhere, and sort of 1800s mine carts all about the place. There's a white picket house fence with house sort of in a sphere and parked in the middle. So what looks like it's happened, and you soon sort of get the idea of the basic mechanic here, is that some alien force is swapping spheres from one world to another world, and you find that there are basically 4 different worlds all interconnected in this fashion.
Okay.
And there are these devices that take chunks out of one of them, move them to another, and at the centre of each of these worlds is this mystical tree thing that's sort of powered by weird energy, and is got some alien purpose of its own, and possibly these seed things are to do with that. It's great. I love that sort of ontological mystery. This sort of, there's a load of just weird stuff that goes up and down when you push it, and there's like weird buttons, and look, an alien language to decipher. I just love that kind of playground, and also trying to piece together what's going on with it all. It's very sort of walking simulatory. It's very well done sort of landscapes as you're wandering around, very high detailed. I mean, the Myst games have been getting like that for quite some time. I think I played the 3rd and 4th ones. The third one, even in the third one, you were getting some really sort of interesting landscapes. And of course, the thing with Myst back in the day, because we're talking sort of 90s era Macs and PCs and stuff, all they could really cope with was essentially a series of cutscenes, which you push left and you will go, you push forward, you'll cutscene your way to the next point. At which point you could stop and look around, and then if you move along another path, there'll be another cutscene. It would basically just chain them together like that, much like a Choose Your Own Adventure book, but just with good animation cutscenes. But in later years with the third and fourth game, the fourth game in particular, and this one, you suddenly have complete freedom of movement, because now we're modelling it in actual 3D rather than it being just a series of sort of pre-rendered scenes being delivered at you in cutscene. The one exception to that is they still, for some reason, are using FMV for people.
Really?
This was a thing back in Myst time. I mean, in later games as well, they didn't really have the tech or the wherewithal to be able to do proper in-game marionettes with lip sync and all the rest of it. So it's weird terminology, but NPCs that you might recognise from something like Skyrim or whatever, wandering around talking at you and so on, animated and stuff.
Looking slightly terrible.
Looking slightly terrible, but back in the 90s that was totally impossible. So they'd just do little snippets of actual video of people delivering real people delivering an acted performance, and then deliver it at you through tiny little letterboxes in the cover of a book or on a monitor screen or something. And they're still doing that in this Obduction thing. And I have to start thinking that that's probably just a stylistic choice at this point, because I remember Myst 4, I think the fourth one, maybe the fifth one, I can't remember which, they actually had in-game, animated NPCs, and they were delivering it in that way, just like you'd see in many other computer games. They didn't look terrible, the lip sync was fine, they were a reasonable number of polygons, but for some reason with this Obduction thing, maybe it's quicker and easier, I don't know, but they've gone sort of back to delivering sort of exposition from people at you through sort of FMV. They appear in freestanding hologram projectors or screens that you see in game. But there's this one really jarring thing, because you get there and there's one bloke who's actually alive and there in this world, and he's only talking at you from the other side of a locked hatchway in this vault he's hidden himself in. And he sort of opens the porthole and there's the FMV, and the lighting's odd and it's got weird edging and it just doesn't look right at all. And you're just thinking, yeah, okay, I see what you're doing there, and why go to all the trouble of either buying in third-party middleware or doing the entire thing from scratch just to make an animated NPC for one or two bits of dialogue. It's probably easier to stick with what you know. But so I don't know, that's a bit weird, but the rest of it's great. I mean, the nature of the puzzles, particularly this sort of connectedness. So you've got four entirely separate worlds, and basically they've had a chunk taken out of them, quite a large play area, and swapped to another world. But then inside those worlds, there's smaller spheres that go backwards and forwards between these other different worlds, and there are machines inside these spheres that let you just basically do the swap while you're stood inside them. And so what you find is that I'm starting to see puzzles that involve changing bits of landscape for the landscape on the other world. For example, the sphere I'm stood in has a precipice and a gap. And the machine's on the edge. If I swap that sphere for on one world for the one in another world, that one replaces it, and in that world, that section has a bridge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then I've got to a point. There's a series of linked puzzles now where there are spheres within spheres, and then you can rotate the spheres in one world and send them back, so they appear in the other world the other way round. It's just blowing my mind, and I'm really loving it. I mean, I've got the hang of it. I conceptually understand what needs to happen now, and I've come across this one. The one I've stopped on at the moment is a large sphere made of four smaller spheres, and then inside each of these spheres are a bunch of pathways through a sort of maze. Yeah. So you have to sort of rotate the entire major sphere to get the one you want, then swap that back out to another world into where there's a machine that will rotate those, then swap it back, push it back, and rotate the whole thing around. It's just I'm gonna need pen and paper. I got the pen and paper out again. Yeah. I love games where the pen and paper, you're just sketching notes, and I like looking back through a big pile of those like 5 years later and working out what the hell's this? Are these spellcasting runes from Underworld 2? Maybe. But Obduction has an interesting feature which is really clever, and I didn't really understand to begin with. It has photos. Basically, you push spacebar, it takes a photo. Okay. Now, you think, well, okay, what's that for? Screenshots, where's the share to Twitch button or whatever? But no, what that is when you come across a note with the hints and the explanation of how the puzzle works, you just push space. That goes into your little photo album. Oh, at any point you push escape and look through your photos, and there are all the documents you've seen. Yeah. So all the hints for the puzzles you can take with you without having to do a whole load of sketching or draw weird little jagged lines on bits of paper scattered around your actual desk. The game provides the opportunity for you to basically capture anything you're looking at so that you can refer to it later without having to trek all the way back to that bit of paper again, which is really nice. I don't know if other games have done that. I don't remember anything like that in Witness, but then Witness wasn't really that kind of thing. No. You learnt the rules, and then you took once you understood how each puzzle worked, you didn't really need to go and look back at hints and stuff. But no, I'm really enjoying it, and it was such I don't know how high key. I suppose obviously if you're a big fan of Myst and was it Uru, Myst Online, that sort of thing. If you're a big fan of those, you'd have definitely been following this and known who the people were and have gone for it. But I don't remember it making much of a fuss, but then I don't really pay much attention anyway, as we know. But I'm really enjoying it. I don't know how long it is. I'm feeling quite self smug and satisfied about having solved the puzzles I'm solving as quickly as I have. But then perhaps everyone else has that as well. I don't know, but that's it. It is a game that makes you feel satisfied for being clever, and you're sort of getting what it's trying to tell you. Oh, this sphere can be rotated in the other world and brought back. And then all these sorts of interconnectors, and of course you've got four or five different alien races, and then the humans have been abducted from various points from like 1800s through to about 2255 or something, and brought to this place, and then they're all not there now for some reason, which I'm yet to discover. But there's all sorts of conjectures about the nature of it all, and a big sort of growing, almost one of the first NPCs says to me in one of these holographic things is, "Don't trust anyone." I thought, oh god, here we go. And already I'm discovering that there's this big sort of fundamental division in their approach to the big thing. And one person wants to do this, and the other person's not so sure and thinks we should probably do that. And I'm gonna, I don't know, eat a very large thing if I'm not going to say eat my hat, because I quite like my hat and I don't want to eat it, but if it turns out that the very first the person who's telling me to do all the stuff is in fact the villain, then I'm going to be quite disappointed, because I've seen that happen almost every Myst game to date so far, and every other game to date, in fact. If I had a penny for every time Mission Control was the villain, I'd have at least 45 pence probably, maybe more.
There's a point where your plot twist is just a plot.
I know. It ceases to become a twist when you're expecting it from the get-go. So, and I was thinking about this as I was sort of doing his bidding. He hasn't proven to be the villain yet. I might be wrong, but that would be a nice change. That would be the twist. Oh, he was on my side and genuinely concerned for my well-being all along. My God, I didn't see that coming. But the idea is that and second and third playthroughs of these sorts of games, you play through and you know that this guy's a wrong 'un. And so you think, right, my options here are to do everything he says and play the game, or my option is to not do what he says, just stand here.
Yeah.
So, it's not like you actually have... It very much is the Bioshock thing, isn't it? Big spoiler for Bioshock now, everyone. If you've never played Bioshock and care, turn away now. But basically, the would you kindly thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was so clever, because I was really, really impressed when that was revealed at the end there. Okay, yeah, the Mission Control voice was the villain, yeah. And all along he'd been using the phrase, would you kindly go and do X, Y, and Z? And, he didn't think anything of it, just the characterisation, just his way of speaking. So you go off and do it. And then it turns out, like about 3/4 of the way, and you discover that you had been pre-programmed to respond to the code "would you kindly." That was your trigger phrase.
Yeah.
And your character, that is. But then you think about, hang on, I was doing that as well.
Yeah.
And then you start to get into some really bleak, dark, sort of unravelling threads about free will in that sort of thing. Anyway, but basically the idea is, okay, I can. In System Shock 2 is a fantastic example. Big spoiler for System Shock 2. Turns out Dr. Janice Polito is dead all along, and it was actually Showdown pretending to be.
Really?
Yes, I know. But again, you sort of think, okay, yeah, because also you're finding audio logs from the actual Janice Polito as you're going through, and she sounds quite different. Yeah, she's the same voice, but a different mannerism. It's much more meek and timid, and this sort of really commanding voice presence. And you think, hello. But you think, well, okay, I know you're the villain, and a sensible person would stop and walk away at this point, or actively work to thwart you, but I can't. If I do that, there's no game here.
Yeah.
So it makes no difference whatsoever. So I've learned not to worry about it anymore, because I'm actually here to play a game.
It reminds me of when you had what the problems you had playing that indie game.
Oh, Stanley
Parable.
Stanley Parable, yeah. Beginner's Guide I liked, and Stanley Parable I didn't like.
Well, Stanley Parable,
both very similar.
Stanley Parable was basically about that whole, are you going to do what you're told, or are you not going to do it? Because this game gave you options for not doing what you were told. Yeah, but I was
so used to there not being any option for not doing what you're told that I just didn't think to try that.
Yeah.
So I did what I was told and just felt really, and was just grim about it all, and was glad when it was over. It didn't really occur to me that any computer game could provide the level of free will that would allow you to reject the Mission Control voice. And the Stanley Parable is interesting because of that, yes. I think I'm revising my opinion. I mean, in my personal experience, it was quite grim.
I think you should play it again.
I think I might try and play it again at some point and just detach myself from it and explore it as what it is, which I think probably is what most people do. I get too into these games. I become the character. I really roll with the role.
It might be worth,
even when I'm single player stuff.
It hurts me to say it, but it might be worth exploring the option of looking for all the endings.
Yeah. Just just plot it out, see just how far it goes. Yeah, because obviously, if you do exactly what you're told, it is over very quickly and leaves you quite unsatisfied and grumpy.
So, but if you take the right hand
there
off,
probably is more out there. Yes, exactly. But yes, so in a way, it doesn't really matter, I suppose, if Obduction is setting me up to go, oh no, I've been doing the villain's bidding all along, and now I have to fix it, because that, in a way, has become a kind of very, very commonly used narrative device in single-player games anyway, which is why the mission control voice always turns out to be the villain. Is because now that you get to a sort of big third act reversal where you've understood that, and now you can work to thwarting the villain, and you're even more determined to thwart the villain because he's made you look like a fool. And so it works well as pulling the little strings of the head to do that. But as you say, if every single third-person action adventure game is essentially that, you start to just not notice. You start not caring anymore. You think, oh yeah, well you might be the villain, or you're not. You probably are. I don't care, because at what point does wanting to play a game trump obvious doing what makes sense? If you don't do what the mission control voice tells you, in most games, Stanley Parable notwithstanding, there is no game. You stop, you go away, you stop playing. And ultimately we're playing these games to be entertained. So a lot of that involves compromise with, all right, well I'll go along with it because enjoying the game requires me to do so. Anyway, Obduction, very good. I recommend it. If obviously you've got to like that kind of game. If you're just not interested in Myst or Witness or whatever, I think it's easier than the Witness, but less abstract. It's not a series of line puzzles dressed up as something fancy. It is a world with puzzles built into the world itself. And I've yet to come across any timed thing or anything that's shooting at me or anything like that. It is a very tranquil sort of thing. It is a walking simulator with puzzles and switches, And if you like that kind of thing, this is a very good example of it. I'm enjoying it a lot, particularly the very clever the obduction mechanic itself. The idea of these spheres swapping between different worlds and how that relates to the landscape and so on. Very good, liking that lot.